Interestingly, there is a prequel novel to The Godfather written by Ed Falco, which goes into further detail of Sonny's rise and an insight into his character, contextualizing the events mentioned in the original book. Now you may think, well, who cares what some author after Puzo wrote about Mario's characters? But Falco's book is actually based on a screenplay Puzo wrote for a fourth Godfather movie, which was supposed to go into production, but Puzo ended up dying. That film would have focused on the rise of Sonny Corleone, who was set to be played by Leonardo DiCaprio. So it's kind of funny in a sick way that even decades after the original movie, Sonny still couldn't get his dues because the movie that would have told his side of the story was cancelled. Like I said, I plan to do a full breakdown of Sonny in a future video, but in the Family Corleone, things are different, and the fact that Sonny saw Vito kill Don Fanucci is essentially retconned for a more disturbing turn of events. In the second chapter, at the age of 11, Sonny curiously followed his father when Vito went out at night, followed him into a building where he was able to see through a small space between a window and curtain. He sees Vito talking to a man who is tied up to a chair. He knows the man, has seen him around the neighborhood. He was clearly beaten badly, and around him were Tessio and Clemenza, who Sonny of course at that age thought of them as uncles. He saw a different side to them that night, and this event was essentially a rite of passage for the young Sonny, who was momentarily frightened and couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Uncle Pete was a jovial man, and his own father was a respectable business owner. But here they were, with Vito having to stop Clemenza breaking the man's leg with a crowbar. Eventually though, Clemenza does bash the man's face in with the crowbar, and Sonny's memory of the event remains fuzzy and dreamlike for years after, a childhood trauma he clearly was not ready to experience. Sonny ran with a group of hoodlums, most of them Irish, during his early street crime years, and these thieves caused trouble for Giuseppe Mariposa, who is the most powerful don at the time, and he used the theft of his goods as an excuse to blame Vito Corleone and his family, to put Vito into his pocket. Needless to say, when Vito finds out that his own son is running with the Irish gang, no less being the leader of them, he is furious, has them all kidnapped and summons Sonny to a warehouse where Sonny's crew are tied up and gagged, reminiscent of all those years back when Sonny first saw his father involved in violence. Vito demands to know whether Sonny is involved with the Irish boys, and to his shock, Sonny clearly says it's his gang. He did all the planning and is directly involved. Vito slaps his son, cursing him, grabbing him by the throat and saying, "You put your life in danger, you put your friends' lives in danger, you act like cowboys, my son, is this what I taught you, is this what you learned from me?" But Sonny requests a private talk with his father. When the two are alone, the book tells us. "Pop," Sonny said. "Pop," he repeated. "I know who you are. I've known for years. Hell, Pop, everyone knows who you are." "And who is that?" Vito asked. "Who is it that you think I am?" "I don't want to be a working schmuck," Sonny said, getting his hands covered with grease for a few bucks a day. "I want to be respected like you," he said. "I want to be feared like you." "I ask you again," Vito said, and he took a step closer to Sonny as the wind blew through his hair, making him look like a wild man. "Who is it you think I am?" "You're a gangster," Sonny said. "Until repeal, your trucks were running hooch. You're into gambling and shylocking and you're big in the unions." Sonny clasped his hands together and shook them for emphasis. "I know what everybody knows, Pop." "You know what everybody knows," Vito repeated. He turned his head to the sky and ran his fingers through his hair, working against the wind to push it back in place. "Pop," Sonny said. He saw hurt in his father's eyes and he wished he could take back what he just said, or else say something to make his father understand that he respected him for who he was, but no words came to mind and he could think of nothing to do or say to make the moment easier. "You're mistaken," Vito said, still looking at the sky. "If you think I'm a common gangster." He was quiet for another second before he finally turned his eyes to Sonny. "I'm a businessman," he said. "I admit, yes, I get my hands dirty working with the likes of Giuseppe Mariposa, but I am not a man like Giuseppe, and if that's what you think, you're wrong." "Pop," Sonny said, and he walked past his father and turned around in a circle before facing him again. "I'm so tired of this, with you always pretending to be somebody you're not. I know you do it for our sake, but I'm sorry," he said. "I know what you do. I know who you are. You run numbers and gambling in most of the Bronx. You're in the unions and protection, and you have the olive oil business." Sonny folded his hands in front of him, as if in prayer. "I'm sorry, Pop," he said, "but I know who you are and what you do." "You think you know," Vito said, "but you don't know anything," he continued once Sonny was standing opposite again. "It's not a secret, the dirty parts of my business, but I'm not a gangster like you're making me out to be. I'm no Al Capone. I'm no Giuseppe Mariposa with his drugs and women and murder. A man like me, I couldn't get to where I am without getting my hands dirty, Sonny. That's the way it is, and I accept the consequences. But it doesn't have to be like that for you. It won't be like that for you." Vito put a hand around the back of Sonny's neck. "Put this out of your mind, this gangster business," he said. "This is not why I worked so hard, so that my son could be a gangster. I won't allow it, Sonny." Sonny put his hand over Vito's hand on the back of his neck. "Pop," he said, "I saw Tessio and Clemenza kill Tom's father. I saw you there with them." Vito yanked his hand away from Sonny's neck and then grasped him roughly by the chin and made him look up. "What are you talking about?" he asked. When Sonny didn't answer immediately, he squeezed his jaw hard enough to start Sonny's lips bleeding again. "What are you talking about?" he repeated. "I saw you," Sonny said, still not meeting his father's eyes, looking past him and through him. "I followed you. I hid on a fire escape across the alley, and I had a view into the back room of some beer joint by the piers. I saw Clemenza pull a pillowcase over Henry Hagen's head, and I saw Tessia go at him with the crowbar." "You dreamed it," Vito said, as if urging this explanation on Sonny. "You dreamed it, Sonny." "No," Sonny said, and when he finally looked at his father, he saw that Vito's face was pale. "No," he repeated, "I didn't dream it, and you're not an upstanding civic figure, Pop. You're a mob guy. You kill people when you have to, and they fear you for that. Listen to me," he said. "I'm no grease monkey. I'm no automotive tycoon. I want to work for you. I want to be a part of your organization." Vito seemed frozen in place as he watched his son. Slowly, the color came back into his face and his grip on Sonny's jaw loosened. When he finally let him go, his hands dropped to his sides, and he then shoved them deep into his pants pockets. "Go inside and get Clemenza," he said, as if nothing out of the unusual had just transpired. "Pop," Vito raised his hand to Sonny. "Do as I say. Send Clemenza out to me." The events were a shock to Vito, who had to go out for a drive in order to collect himself after finding out what his son thinks of him, and he eventually relents, allowing Sonny to enter the family business under the watchful eye of Peter Clemenza. And when they mention Tom, yes, that's Tom Hagen's father. This of course adds to the dynamic of Sonny coming home with Tom, demanding that he be taken care of, but we can discuss that in another video. The book tells us that Vito summoned his son for a meeting after this, and it goes as follows. "Sit down," Vito said. "Be quiet and listen to me. I have some things I want to tell you." Vito folded his hands in his lap and gathered his thoughts. "This is not what I wanted for you, but I can see that I can't keep it from you. The best I can do is keep you from acting like a fool and getting yourself and your friends killed over a few dollars by a wild man like Giuseppe Mariposa." "Nobody even got a scratch," Sonny said, and then he was silent again when he saw the look in his father's eyes. "We'll talk about this matter once," Vito said, raising his finger, "and then I don't want to talk about it ever again." Vito tugged at the bottom of his vest and then folded his hands over his belly. He coughed and then continued. "I'm sorry you witnessed what you did," he said. "Tom's father was a degenerate gambler and a drunk. Back then, I was not who I am now. Henry Hagen insulted us in a way that, had I kept Clemenza and Tessio from doing what they did, I would have lost their respect. In this business, as in life, respect is everything. In this life, Sonny, you can't demand respect. You must command it. Are you listening to me?" When Sonny nodded, Vito added, "But I am not a man who enjoys that kind of thing, and I'm not a man who wants that kind of thing to happen. But I am a man, and I do what has to be done for my family. For my family, Sonny." Vito looked at the glass of Strega on his desk as if he was considering taking another drink, and then he looked back to Sonny. "I have one question for you," he said, "and I'd like a simple answer. When you brought Tom back to our home all those years ago, when you set him down in that chair before me, you knew I was responsible for him being an orphan, and you were accusing me, weren't you?" "No, Pop," Sonny said, and he started to reach for his father before he pulled his hand back. "I was a kid," he said. "I admit," he touched his temple with wiggling fingers, "there were a lot of things going on in my head after what I saw, but all I can remember is thinking that I wanted you to fix the problem. I wanted you to fix Tom's problems." "And that was it," Vito said. "You wanted me to fix his problems?" "That's all I can remember thinking," Sonny said. "It was a long time ago." Vito watched his son, studying his face. Then he touched Sonny's knees. "Tom must never know what you know," he said. "Never." "I give you my word," Sonny said, and he put his hand over his father's. "This is a secret I'll take to my grave." Vito patted Sonny's hand and then pulled his chair back. "Listen to me carefully, Sonny," he said. "In this business, if you don't learn to control that temper of yours, the grave will come sooner than you think." "I understand, Pop," Sonny said. "I'll learn, I will." "I say to you again," Vito said, "I did not want this for you." He folded his hands in front of him as if indulging in one final prayer. "There's more money and more power in the legitimate business world," he said, "and there's nobody coming to kill you the way it has been for me. When I was a boy, men came for my father. When my brother swore vengeance, they killed him too. When my mother pleaded for my life, they killed her, and then they came looking for me. I escaped and made my life here in America. But always in this business there are men who want to kill you, so that I never escaped." When Sonny looked shocked, Vito said, "No, I never told you these things. Why should I? I hope to keep them from you." As if with a final hope that Sonny might change his mind, he said, "This is not the life I want for you, Sonny." "Pop," Sonny answered, deaf to Vito's wishes, "I'll be someone you can always trust. I'll be your right-hand man." Vito watched Sonny another moment and then almost imperceptibly shook his head, as if reluctantly but finally giving up. "With you as my right-hand man," he said, and he got up and shoved his chair aside. "You'll make your mother a widow and yourself an orphan." "Clemenza will teach you the business," he said, the desk between him and his son. "You'll start at the bottom, like everyone else." Sonny makes his bones in the Corleone family with one of the most dramatic and tragic events of the book. One of his good friends was Bobby Corcoran, a warm-hearted orphaned Irishman who took care of his sister and niece by going on stick-up jobs with Sonny. During a shootout that had erupted between numerous groups during a parade, Bobby, who was there to protect his friend Sonny, accidentally shot Vito Corleone in the shoulder when he had been aiming for someone behind Vito who was about to kill the Don. After the shootout was over, Bobby went home, anxious and desperate to talk to Sonny so that he and his father would know that the shooting was an accident and he had tried to save Vito. Unfortunately, the Corleones had already sanctioned his murder, and Clemenza sends Sonny to do the job. The reality of mafia life dawns on the 19-year-old Sonny, who arrives at Bobby's apartment to do the deed. Bobby makes his case, even saying word had already gotten to Clemenza that the shooting was an accident. But similar to the scene in The Sopranos where Tony sends Christopher to kill the cop, Sonny says it doesn't matter what the truth is now, that he has no choice. Even still, he finds himself unable to pull the trigger. He ends up insulting Bobby's family, intentionally provoking him so that Bobby lunges at him and then he shoots him. Perhaps this was so that he'd be able to justify killing his own friend to himself by thinking of it as self-defense. I have interviewed Ed Falco on the channel and I asked him about Sonny seeing Tom Hagen's father's death and why this was different from the original book where Sonny sees Fanucci's death. This is what Falco had to say.
All of those changes are necessary for the plot of the Family Corleone. And they didn't contradict the movies. Again, so I'm thinking the vast majority of the readers of the Family Corleone will be familiar with the films rather than the novel. So I didn't feel by making those changes that I was going to pull anybody out of the story that they already knew, except for the most dedicated readers of the novel. They would recognize the differences. Yeah, I mean, it was something I wanted to. It was a twist I wanted to put into the novel, that suggested something more about the relationship between Sonny. I think the best explanation is that I just wanted to do something a little bit different in the novel and change the nature of the relationship between Tom Hagen and Sonny Corleone. Sonny knowing what happened and keeping it from him is another kind of necessary corruption, a lie he had to keep, because otherwise he would just destroy the relationship. And it also, for me, provided an explanation of why Vito Corleone took in Tom Hagen,
Yes.
why he took Tom Hagen into his family. So it kind of worked for me as a possible twist on the novel. I think, if you're doing something like this as a writer, you probably want to put your own touch on some things.
So, what do you make of Sonny as a character, as a Don, and as a person? Do you like his initiation into the family in Mario Puzo's novel, or do you prefer the way it was done in the Family Corleone? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.